said, I'm here representing the Bathurst Whole Food Co-op today. And I've had a bit of experience in producing organic vegetables on a small scale myself, and also helping coordinate supply of fresh produce for the co-op. So I've got a long-standing relationship with those guys, and I'm a big supporter of collaborative and cooperative endeavour. But I've got specific insight, I guess, into small sustainable production systems. So that's basically what my presentation today is about. So I'll follow on a little from some of the topics that Ashley touched on in terms of markets in the local region. But yeah, probably get into just a little bit more micro detail about what that might involve and what you might like to consider. So I'll give you a brief definition of an agricultural marketing system, as well as touch on some local marketing channels for local produce. So that's more the traditional methods that you'd probably be a little aware of. Getting into a little bit of detail about online marketing, which is probably of interest to many of you. And then also how you can use branding to support those efforts, and also how you can use sustainability as a marketing tool. And that includes using local origin as a selling point, and potentially organic certification to support your sustainable efforts. So yeah, just to start off, I'm talking about what an agricultural marketing system is. So you're probably already aware that it's about selling, but it's more than that. You need to really factor in production as well as logistics. So when you're producing, you're making decisions that are impacting the eventual sale of your product. You need to be aware, and you probably will be aware of a lot of the impact that will have. And also when you choose your logistics options, that's also going to have some sort of impact which you should make yourself aware of. So just when you're considering your marketing system design, do consider that it's a whole chain that goes right through, and all of it has an impact on the eventual sale. But when we talk about the eventual sale, which is what I'm going to focus on, the thing that you really need to consider, I guess, is the consumer. So what's the benefit that they're getting out of it? How do you communicate with them? And how do you generate interest from them in repeat purchases, and therefore make yourself a profit, cover your costs, and put a bit of money in your back pocket? So an agricultural marketing system starts with production and ends with consumption, and a good marketing system will result in two outcomes. So consumers will be satisfied because the product was good value, it meets their expectations and needs, and repeat purchasing is enabled, so that supports the producer, and the producer will be covered in terms of their costs, and also generating a profit, fingers crossed. So talk about just some more traditional sort of marketing channels. I won't go into too much detail, but there are numerous channels for local produce to be sold into the local market. Unfortunately, there's no formula for picking the right one for your situation. The trick, I guess, is to use channels, and it might not be one, it might be more than one, that work best for both yourself, your business, and the consumer. So keeping that consumer in mind the whole way through. An important issue to consider is the level of interaction between the producer and the consumer. So that's because it affects your potential return, and that's pretty significant for small producers. So small producers will typically have a higher cost of production, and therefore require a higher return to cover those costs. So we can divide up the sales methods into direct and indirect methods. So your direct ones are where you're interacting more directly, selling produce to consumers themselves, whereas indirect ones, of course, you're selling through a third party, and we'll talk a little bit more about what they are. So your direct methods, some of the typical ones would be at the farm gate, at the roadside, through markets like farmers markets, and perhaps deliveries. And also these days we can include direct online sales. So we'll get into online stuff a little bit more in a moment. But yeah, those traditional methods of farm gate, roadside and markets are all closely related, and are really just extensions of the farm itself. So that's whereby you're basically selling direct again to the consumer. They all have different setup costs, ongoing costs and logistic requirements, but the sales are made direct to the consumer in a similar manner. Produce is exposed to limited storage and transport, and is often fresher. So it may also be flavoursome and cost less than comparable produce. So there are advantages there for both the consumer and the producer. Unfortunately, small producers, well, all producers are probably focused on production issues and spend a lot of their time in that sort of endeavour, and therefore the marketing side of things might miss out a little bit in terms of resources. So that's something hopefully I can give you a little bit of information or inspiration about. And I just mentioned delivery. That's a little bit different to those extensions at the farm gate. It's a little bit more complex and difficult to set up. and a lot of the marketing needs to happen prior to the actual purchase occurring. So you can incorporate some of the other concepts I'll talk about a little bit later. So by making a little bit of effort and spending a little bit more, perhaps marketing in these situations can be improved. Greater appeal can be created by understanding how the consumer sees your business or product and by differentiating your business from competitors. Every farm has a story to tell, and small producers should try to take advantage of this because they've all got very special, unique stories that they can pass on. And they should be doing this because the big ones are doing it too. So you'll notice that you go into the supermarkets these days and you look at the marketing and packaging, and that'll have little stories about how produce was brought to this situation and what sort of benefit that will be for you, to try and give you a sense of direct contact with the person that's produced those goods. So small producers might not think to do that, but it's probably something important that you might like to consider. So moving on from those direct channels, I'm sorry to spend so much time on that, but some indirect channels that you might also like to consider, and this is probably more relevant as you get larger in scale, are your retailers. So if you go direct to retailers, also trade through wholesalers, going to cafes and restaurants or other hospitality businesses, and also online by third-party sales through other websites, not your own. So the direct involvement with the consumer is reduced. So some direct label channels there. I'm forgetting my slide. So just an example of a few different situations. So we've got more of a roadside one on the left, a farm gate one up the top where there's a nice shed set up, and I think that bottom one might actually be a picture from the Orange Farmers Market. So we'll come to this one in a moment. So indirect channels, they have less involvement with the consumer. However, they've still got certain considerations like ordering, customer contact and logistics. However, they've still got certain considerations like ordering, customer contact and logistics. So you need to just think about those things a little bit differently when you're engaged in indirect methods. The biggest trade-off there with those indirect methods is a lower price. So also your cash transactions are less likely and invoices are required, so there's a little bit more records that need to be kept, I guess, which is typical. Volume and continuity of supply is also more important, and product consistency is also a little bit more relevant to those people purchasing off you in bulk, so they can make sure they can sell it on. And then you're also going to expose yourself to larger producers. So as a small producer, once you get into that sort of scale of things, it can be a little bit more difficult to compete on price, and as a small producer, that reduction in price may have a greater impact on your production. So, unfortunately, in the local situation, the avenues for sales might be a bit restricted, and that's to do with the amount of volume that you trade into the local market. So you might not be able to sell everything you grow directly, and therefore you might want to then consider a mix where you use some direct and some indirect methods, and it's up to you and you know your production system and your product that you generate as to what's suitable in that regard. So looking then beyond that into online marketing, this is an example of a local, probably medium scale vegetable producer or small scale vegetable producer from Cowra Original Farm. So this is an example of how they're marketing direct to people. So they're using, you probably can't see it there, but they do fresh boxes of produce, so small box, medium, and some additional stuff that you can purchase as well. So that's just one system. But in general, online marketing is a great way to complement and support existing sales channels using these methods. So it can increase sales via existing channels, but it also creates new ones. So I don't think John from Cowra was doing boxes until he got into the online side of things, so that enabled him to expand and do something a little bit differently and generate an additional income stream, which is important. But digital marketing is now well established, so 10 years ago not so much, but these days most consumers are comfortable with it and are at least happy to look at the information you provide and consider them as an alternative purchase situation. So online marketing does deserve attention from small producers, as it can improve marketing and doesn't have to be hard or costly. So specifically online marketing allows direct sales, direct communication and direct advertising to a target market. So that might not be possible otherwise in a local situation. It expands your customer base because it reaches a wider audience. That's in itself, I'm sure you'd all be aware, can be a benefit. Also, the way you present your product and business can be very specific and highly designed, so that allows a great degree of control in regard to your image, your information, your communication and your branding. So that can all be a significant benefit to you. provides more opportunities to build relationships with customers. So building relationships results in a high level of product recall in a purchase situation and brand recognition, so that leads to repeat purchasing. So, you know, it can create a lot of benefits right through. So online marketing is highly effective in branding, and I'll just try and discuss that briefly in a moment, try and be brief. Another example, so that one's Carbine Pastured. So they're another local producer. They've got a Facebook page here, so this is just a different example from a website, how Facebook is being used commonly now by lots of businesses to sell their produce. So I think the difference between websites where you can sell produce directly and Facebook is that this is more of a communication method where you just inform people directly about the produce that you offer, directing them to your preferred sales channel. So they're direct methods, and I've mentioned before that you can also do things via third-party websites, and an example of that is the growing interest in wine clubs. So online wine clubs are growing market share in Australia, and that's just one example of how you can sell through a third party. There's probably many more out there. Now, you can employ a business to set up and manage a website or develop a strategy for your digital marketing, and that can be costly. So at a small scale, that might be a bit prohibitive, and alternatively, you can set up websites on your own within your existing business structure, perhaps with a few tweaks and some investment in skills and resources. Many small producers will want to limit expenditure in developing marketing because obviously they're spending all their time in production, and so for this reason the DIY approach is probably preferred. So social media is more popular, and it can stand alone or it can be used as part of an integrated online approach. It's often used to enhance advertising and communication directly to consumers to preferred sales channel. Facebook, Twitter and Instagram are probably the popular ones that you've all heard of. There's probably other ones out there, but I'm not necessarily informed about those, so I can't mention them. But yeah, Facebook in particular is becoming more and more common, so that's probably something you might like to investigate if you're curious about how to expand your business through online digital methods. So if you're a small producer and you're wanting to take a DIY approach, there is some good news because there's lots of websites out there that allow you to create your own website and engage in some direct marketing that way. And social media is also readily accessible. Once you get started, it's not too hard, so it might be just a case of dipping your toes in and seeing what you like about it and what you don't, and just trying to work with that. Then I guess you just got to keep up to date with it once you've got into it. So there's a little bit of investment in time and effort in that regard. But yeah, it's sort of the way a lot of people are going, and to compete with the other people that are doing that, I guess this is something you might need to actually consider. So just some examples of some websites. There's another one, it's Rosnay Organic Wine, so it's another website you might like to have a look at, and they do a few things differently to what Our Original Farm does. But there's plenty of website design websites out there, so you just go online, look up free website design or just website design, and you start to bring up these sort of options. So the ones I've got here is Wix, Squarespace, Weebly and Shopify, how they can benefit you and how you can use them. So one of the important things is if you want to sell online, you do need one of these sites to have e-commerce availability. So that's something, a keyword you should probably look for if you're having a scout about on the internet. But aside from that, you'd already know there's lots of resources online, and there's plenty that'll help you with your marketing. So in particular, logo creation. So if you're looking into doing some branding, there's actually stuff out there which will help you with that. And poster creation. So if you want to do some marketing sheets for your local enterprise, that's something you can look at. So some examples of that which I haven't put up is Canva and blog posters, so there you can check out online. So I mentioned I'd talk about branding. That's pretty significant. A lot of small producers don't do it, but it's actually something that you can get a lot of benefit out of. The purpose of branding is to ensure consumers recall the product that is being marketed when the purchase situation arises. So you really want the consumer to get into that purchase situation where they're at the farmers markets perhaps, and they're looking for some fresh honey or something like that. In that situation, if you brand it effectively, you can get that consumer to come to your store rather than someone else's. So we don't want to take income away from our collaborators in the local economy, but that's what you'd be looking at doing, trying to have effective branding that draws them into your product rather than someone else's. So effective branding plays off the strengths of the product or business to create positive associations and connections in the target market. Highlighting the features of your product and business which appeal to the market allows branding to be effective. So Ashley mentioned it, you've got to look at the things that are unique and significant to your target market and try and push those or bring them to their attention. So they're not just walking past the market stand, they're actually looking at it, seeing that there's something interesting perhaps to draw their eye, and then following through by providing some information or just by providing a good product that meets their expectations. Interestingly too, branding is being used to market sustainable goods without using third-party accreditation. So increasingly these days you get people marketing their sustainability without using organic certification or similar sorts of accreditation. So that's just something to keep in mind. As a small producer, you may not need to have to pay for an expensive certification to get that sort of benefit from the market or that recognition. So branding is not about a funky name, a third-party accreditation, a catchy slogan, eye-catching signage, online marketing, or great prices, but it can be a mix of these things. So again, whichever ones play to your strengths and weaknesses as a producer. Keep in mind that branding is occurring even if you're not trying, so whenever the consumer deals with you, you're giving them some sort of perception which they'll take away and that'll inform their future purchases, whether it be with you or somebody else. I just wanted to quickly mention, because I've run out of time, you should be using sustainability as a sustainable producer, and that as a marketing point of difference, and that should also include local origin. So Ashley mentioned in our region we've got cold climates, and that means production can be somewhat restricted, but at the same time, it gives you that extra increase in flavour. The flavonoids in the produce will be increased for fresh produce. So that's something you can take advantage of, and that works in the local situation. You might both have grown, you might have two people in the market both growing in a similar climate, and therefore both have similar qualities, but if you effectively market your flavour, then you'll get sales before they do. So also using those more direct, shorter marketing chains also gives you that sustainable edge, I suppose. So when you're competing with other larger organisations, that's something you should keep in mind. And also, we mentioned that there's a market out there now which is growing for, I guess, a foodie culture. You can see that in a lot of the television programming these days with your MasterChefs and all that sort of stuff. So trying to appeal to these people who have a greater interest in flavour and quality might be a good way of creating some extra revenue for your farm, and also there tend to be opinion makers within the broader market, so tapping into them can be a good thing for that region. And then also, if you're engaged in sustainable production, you might consider organic certification as a marketing tool. Perhaps in the local situation where you're dealing directly with your consumer, you might not need to do that because you can communicate the value of your production system and your products directly to them. But where you're doing something more indirectly, then that can give you some provenance about how you're growing your produce and some assurance in the mind of your consumer that you're trying to connect with, that you have a sustainable product for them. So I've gone on for well past time, and I just wanted to wrap up by saying, all these things present their own challenges and difficulties, especially for small producers who are, time-starved and resource-poor. So one of the options that we're talking about as a solution today is collaborating and cooperating, and that can work in marketing. So that might be something as simple as, sharing a market stall with your neighbour, so both selling different products but the same stall, cutting your costs, maybe taking turn about in manning that stall. Could be sharing resources like a cool storeroom or a drying facility, so that you can value out and extend the shelf life of your product. So yeah, keep in mind that the people that are in the room today might actually have some solutions that you can benefit from, or that you can collaborate with to create a better outcome for you and for your community. So if you want any further information about what I've spoken about, any of those quick flashes on the screen generate any interest, just let me know. Right, thanks everyone.